Hello, everyone, and welcome to Singularity Podcast. Singularity Podcast is a feature of Singularity weblog where you can go and listen to it or download it in full. As you may already know, my name is Socrates, and as always, I will be the man with the questions. Today, I'm privileged to have Barry Ptolemy as my guest with the answers. Barry is most recently the director and producer of the upcoming Singularitarian movie about the life and ideas of Ray Kurzweil, appropriately titled Transcendent Man. Hi, Barry, and welcome to Singularity Podcast. It is great to have you here today.
Hi, Nikolai. It's great to be here.
All right. I will jump straight into the interview by asking you the following questions. Barry, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and especially why and how you got interested in making documentary movies, and why and how you got interested in the technological singularity in general and in Ray Kurzweil in particular?
Yeah, that's a great question and one I don't fully understand. It's hard to understand why we have these interests. My interest in technology has spanned a few decades, goes back to my teenage years, and I had simultaneously an interest in film and filmmaking, and made my first film when I was only 13 years old. It was called The Holograph, and I had a really keen interest in making films, so I went off to film school, but my interest in technology never went away, and kind of ideas about the singularity, not articulated as much as Ray has, but they were there. And so when I finally came across his book, The Singularity is Near, in 2005, I was left with the desire to make the film, and after contacting Ray and getting his interest, we did just that.
Based on our preliminary conversations, I know that you had some kind of involvement with Steven Spielberg's movie E.T. Out of curiosity, can you tell our listeners a little bit about that?
Sure. That's kind of really where I cut my teeth, and it was 1981. This is before Steven Spielberg's a giant, global phenomenon that he is today. But he was making a little film called E.T. and in Northern California on location in the giant redwoods there on the Oregon border and California border. And I was fortunate enough to be involved in that film on location for the entire month, and really got a front row seat at how Steven Spielberg makes films. And when that film came out, it inspired me. It's a very transcendent film to begin with, and when that film came out, I was really touched by it, like a lot of people are. And I knew at the very gullible age of 12 or 13, whatever it was, that I wanted to make films for the rest of my life, and so that's what I started to set out to do. And that's when I made my first film that I enlisted into a film festival called The Holograph, and which was a technological film even way back then. And then, pursued one project after another, went to film school, and so on and so forth. And again, I had this desire to make films for a long time, and I really wanted to do something different though, and create. There's a lot of films that are being remade all the time, and I wanted to do something different. And so I saw in this, Ray's story and the story in The Singularity is Near is an opportunity to do something really different and novel. And so that's what we set out to do.
So would you say that it's fair to say that you got inspired to do movies in general by Steven Spielberg's example, and then in particular to do a singularitarian movie like Transcendent Man, you got inspired by Ray Kurzweil's book, The Singularity is Near?
Yeah, I think that's a correct assessment of the situation. I was, a lot of young filmmakers of my age were inspired by Steven Spielberg and his films. Very palatable, and as a youth, they were very enjoyable. I've since kind of I haven't moved on past Steven Spielberg, but I've moved into other more mature trained and into other more mature filmmakers as I got older. But I always appreciated, his work, and was greatly inspired by it. And then another person that would inspire me to no end would be Ray Kurzweil, and how he's articulated these ideas of exponential growth and technology, and particularly in The Singularity is Near. I'd also read Age of Spiritual Machines, but for me, the Singularity is Near is truly a once-in-a-generation book. I believe it to be the most profound book ever written, and so yes, it was extremely inspiring.
Okay, so let me start going into the meat of the matter here of the Singularity itself by asking you a bit of a broader question, a very important one, I believe, and that is namely, how do you define the singularity, or what, in your opinion, is the technological singularity?
Right. And that's another good question because there are different interpretations, but my interpretation is that of Ray's, which is it's a point in the near future. Ray puts it at about 2045 when technology will be speeding up so much that we won't be able to keep up unless we merge with the technology that we've created. And so I think that is probably the most elegant definition that I've ever heard of the singularity.
Yeah. So how have your ideas and perception of both Ray Kurzweil and the singularity itself evolved before and after making the movie, or have they evolved at all?
Well, they certainly have. I mean, they become much more subtle, and it's important to note that when I set out to make the movie, and with my colleagues and my producing partner Felicia, really our idea was to try to see if we could shoot down these ideas, if we could speak to enough thought leaders and scientists that these ideas could be, dismissed. And I think that's an important note to point out. It ends up that throughout making the film and following Ray around over the course of 2 years to I think we were in something like 5 countries and over 30 cities, and we spent a lot of time. We interviewed over 71 thought leaders and scientists. That the opposite became true. I became more, believing in the idea of the singularity than I had previous to making the film.
So based on the fact that my understanding is that you had a sort of very genuinely honest and sort of scientific or proto-scientific approach of throwing everything that you could find at the idea of the technological singularity and then estimate or evaluate whether it's able to stay on its own after that. And that's based on your experience during shooting of the movie, your beliefs became your convictions in the end. Is that a fair assessment?
I wouldn't go so far as to say that I employed the scientific method when I was making the film. I think it's fair to say that I employed, a journalistic ethic, though. Looking at the material and looking at the, the beliefs of other thought leaders and scientists, and not being swayed one way or the other. I do believe that is a true statement. I didn't, go into the hard sciences as much as a real scientist would be. I'm not a scientist, and I don't pretend to be, but I do believe that we looked at it as fairly as a filmmaker could.
So, what is the impact of the movie on your personal life and ideas and your perception of the future?
Well, as I said, I believe that these ideas are quite obvious, and I think that a lot of people have them early on in life, and that society has this tendency to kind of squash these ideas early on, and they're almost seemed ridiculous as a 13 or 14-year-old as you start to kind of contemplate your universe. And so I had some of these ideas, like I know many other people do, at a very early age, and I had kind of put them away because it was ridiculous. I would tell people when I was 16 and 17 years old that, I thought we were going to live forever. I even used the same metaphor as Ray. I thought we could make it from a bridge to a bridge to a bridge. And people just thought it was ridiculous. And so I kind of, in my college years, didn't talk about it so much. So when I kind of came back in contact with these ideas again with Ray's books, it was really like coming home, and it was an amazing feeling. It was very gratifying, and that was the experience I had when I opened up and I cracked Singularity's Near. It was like I immediately felt, that these ideas that I had put away, they were kind of ratified now and articulated in a way that I never could by this genius Ray Kurzweil, and it was great.
Yeah. So, and what would be the general goal for your audience, or for the sort of worldly impact that you would like to accomplish with the release of your movie?
Well, again, I'm a filmmaker. I would like the film, I'd like people to walk away entertained, but more than that, I'd like people to be moved and to experience, frankly, a transcendent moment, if that is a possibility. And that is what I set out to do from the very beginning. Is we live our lives sometimes in quiet desperation. We live in these valleys, these troughs, and sometimes you can have these peak experiences and see just a little bit further than you can on any other day. And then we're able to evolve. Our species evolved a little bit more from doing that. So my hope is that we're able to create a movie that can do that and help us, see just a little bit further and help us get down the road. And I think, I hope that the film itself offers hope about the future.
Mm-hmm. So, do you happen to have a certain kind of a benchmark according to which you would know how successful you were, and how do you gauge it? I mean, do you, for example, have a certain number of people that you would like to reach? Do you, for example, go and sit onto the screenings of the movie and then watch the reaction of the audience to sort of see and feel if they had that transcendent moment or minute that you were talking about?
The great thing about filmmakers today is we get to enjoy audiences' reactions in virtual reality. So I get to watch these tweets that start going off on the film right after people watch the film. A room full of strangers watch the film at any particular venue, and I get to collect all these tweets and understand what people are actually feeling when they're watching the film, or right directly after, because people are tweeting right from the theater, or right when they're leaving. So that's kind of an enjoyable thing. And of course, I'm there in person and often with Ray and taking questions directly after, and so I get to see people's response live, and that's really enjoyable as well. But we have big, we think the film is a big film, and it recognizes big ideas, and it's a big world out there. And I think that we believe that the film can really do a lot to help start to prepare people for this road towards the singularity.
So, what was the hardest thing that you had to overcome during the shooting of the movie?
Well, let's see, the hardest.
Or was it in post-production? Was it during the production, or in distribution,
I think that,
maybe?
Probably in production and post-production, finding the story, the heart of the matter, was a very challenging task, and something that took months and years really for us to distill down and really find the meat of. So that was probably the single most challenging thing to do. Of course, there's many challenges in making a film, but I think, though, articulating the ideas in an entertaining way with a story is probably the biggest one.
And was there a most surprising thing that you discovered for yourself during that process?
There are so many. I mean, things. For example, academians, people in posts of academic research, or scholars, or professors all around the world. Actually, I found people that have a bit of envy in Ray Kurzweil, and I can't really explain it, but the vast majority of people that come in contact with his ideas really are moved by them and taken by them, and so he is kind of put on this pedestal. And I think that other individuals out there, peers of Ray, are kind of envious of that, and that was something that I was surprised to see. I was amazed to see how rampant it was, and how clear that was the case. That people were, I think, quite frankly, jealous that he gets to be, what some people have suggested him to be, which is the prophet. I don't think that he's that, nor does Ray, but he's made to appear that way sometimes.
He's also occasionally being called a charlatan or a genius,
Sure.
as well as a prophet or a futurist. So who is Ray Kurzweil for you?
Well, he's many things. He's certainly a genius, and he's also, like he says, he puts inventor first and foremost behind his name. So he calls himself an inventor before anything else. And before you can call, anyone can call anyone a charlatan who has actually invented some of the technologies that are in the bedrock of our daily lives. It's hard to call somebody like that a charlatan.
Yeah.
He's made so many inventions that we use every single day. And they're really remarkable inventions. But I do think he'll become most famous for his books and his predictions of the future. And, of course, if they turn out to be accurate, or at least primarily accurate, I do think he'll become extremely famous, and he'll be the leader of this whole singularity movement.
The reason I ask you that question is because even though I haven't had the chance to see the movie just yet, I've seen the trailer many, many times, and it starts in a very interesting way with sort of a zoomed-in face of Ray Kurzweil and this caller to a TV station who I think, if I remember correctly, called him a crackpot even.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was that surprise I shared with you, which was that people, the people that are in academic circles tend to frown upon some of these ideas. They see themselves as elitist, but that's always been the case. With the Wright brothers, they thought that their flights they were crackpots, and the Army didn't want to use them, and even they were turned down by the U.S. government to use their invention.
Yeah.
I could list a dozen other major inventors and thought leaders who are really revolutionaries in their day. Albert Einstein, comes to mind, who were completely dismissed back in their day, and it took many years and decades before they prevailed. And that's happening now with Ray, and I believe it will continue to happen. And I do think, there will be a point where he will prevail, primarily because of he's been so courageous in his books and in our movie, and also the movie he made, that he has gone on the record and said exactly what he believes, and we have it there for all to see. So we can go back and take a look 10 years from now, because people think it's so obvious that the internet was going to do what it did now.
Yeah.
But back in the day, back in the 80s, when Ray was suggesting what's going to happen with the internet, no one was thinking that. But now today, when Ray says, computers will shrink to the size of a red blood cell, people think that's ridiculous. So we'll have all these ideas recorded, and in 10, 15, 20 years, we can go back and people can see that he, in fact, was making these predictions when others were saying, no, that wouldn't happen.
Yeah, I remember somebody criticizing him just about a year ago that he predicted that we will be able to communicate verbally with our cell phones by now or something like that. And I think just last week, Google released Google Voice for their Android 2.2 system. Then vLingo, which has been available for a while, even before that, made their service available for free, following Google's example. So indeed, we're already communicating with many of our computers via voice.
That's
and
absolutely
back.
Correct. And what you're pointing out is a great topic, because people, even Ray predicted that we would be speaking and using voice activation like that a lot, voice recognition, in about 2009 and 2010. Well, as late as 2008, there was nothing out there. But again, because of the exponential these technologies growing exponentially, even the last year and months, suddenly you can see this huge increase in technology. And so,
absolutely,
right on target, just like Ray said, in late 2009 and into 2010, suddenly there was an explosion of this voice recognition software, from drag and dictation by neurons, and like you mentioned, Google, and they're getting really good. I have an iPhone, and it does a really good job of taking what I'm saying and turning it into text for various different applications, and it's really getting good. And we're a couple years away from where it will be completely seamless, and we'll be talking to our mobile computers wherever we go all the time.
Yeah, and there's similar systems for cars that are able to read your emails or incoming text messages to you while you're driving safely.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's, since we're talking about Ray Kurzweil's predictions at the moment, let's see, do you accept his timeline for the singularity of around 2045, as you already mentioned, to be
I pretty much do. I do think that, believe it or not, Ray is ever so slightly conservative, and in the book Singularity, he uses a worst case assessment at all of the ways that he breaks up down the model on how we're going to get there. I think that if only one of those steps were to just happen a little sooner, we could see basically what he's referring to as a singularity happen a few years earlier, even by the late 2030s. Of course, we have some good, funny conversations regarding the fact that I think he's a conservative with these ideas. He's obviously considered, a radical by the establishment. But for the most part, I think he's been, who am I to argue with Ray Kurzweil about these dates? I mean, he's hit them more often than anyone else. So, but when you start to immerse yourself and you really start to look at them on a daily basis, you can see how you, in fact, can start to make kind of, predictions that bear out. And so, that's my 2 cents. I think that we'll get to the singularity before Ray's actual date.
And what about the most popular criticism of him, that he is way too optimistic in the sense of the positive benefits of any potential technological singularity with respect to our species in particular? There's another scientist called Hugo de Garis, for example, who believes that Ray Kurzweil's inventions may contribute to the worst global war, what he calls the Artilect War, that the world has ever seen before, and that potentially our species would either be greatly challenged or may not survive any potential singularity at all.
Yes. That's a complex conversation, Nick, but, to Hugo's point, and I interviewed him at length for our film, and we went over to China and tried to see what he was doing over there. And, I think he agrees with Ray, for example, on the speed of the technological change. But the problem is that where Ray differs from Hugo and where I differ from Hugo is that he will not consider the fact that these technologies continue to shrink to blood cell size levels and nano size levels, which really eliminates an us and them scenario, meaning that there will be there's no room where you'll put the AIs on one side of the room, the Terminator robots, and us on the other side. We will be completely merging with them, and we will be these AIs, and they will be us. And, we'll be very, very connected, and the threshold for wars will continue to go down. I mean, I don't take a knife and stab one of my other arms with a knife, because I understand that would serve me, it would, do me great harm. So in the same way, I don't think we're going to be fighting a war between these advanced AIs and us in the future. It's kind of like, our industrial war complex fighting the Amish. It just would be a non-starter. There won't be it won't be a very long war. Let me just say that. So that's kind of my take on Hugo's take on it. And I can't remember. You had another question that was in there. Did I answer?
Well, do you believe that the impact of the technological singularity would be greatly beneficial to us as a species?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I do see the down. I mean, to your point about Ray being an optimist, yes, Ray is an optimist, and could you even be an inventor without being an optimist? Could you even start a project knowing that technology doesn't exist yet and actually set out to create some new technology if you weren't an optimist? So, thank goodness for the optimists of the world. But Ray does work hard at seeing the downside, of these technologies. He talks about them all the time, and he's given a lot of thought to them. And, there is a promise and peril of all these technologies. And, technology is definitely a double-edged sword, and it always has been. But for the most part, when we invented fire, we used it to cook our food and to warm ourselves and not to burn down our neighbor's house. And the same thing with all the other myriad technologies that we've ever created. We primarily use them for good. And that's, you have to look at the human race and understand that the humans pretty much are, a group of people that are good for the most part. That's my belief, and that's what I try to articulate in the film.
Mm-hmm. So you would consider yourself to be an optimist yourself?
Yes, I do. I mean, I look around, and if I look at the technologies that I enjoy, they're so transparent to me, and wonder what life be without these technologies. It's things that again, I can't even imagine doing without things like language or music or law or the printing press, not to mention things like the computer, the car, even something like a fork or a milkshake. I mean, I couldn't imagine life without these technologies, how brutish and short and harsh it would be to live in that world. So yes, I'm an optimist, and I look forward to enjoying, these technological advances as they come.
So would that be the major thing that you would like our listeners to take away from this podcast interview with you today?
Well, it's certainly one of them. I think that, we are looking down the horizon of a great dawning of our civilization. But it's important, I think, to note to live for today. And although we have one eye on the future because it's going to be changing quick, we also make sure that we, really enjoy the benefits of the technologies we have today and to live in the now, because it's easy to constantly look to the future. And so that's, if I had any wisdom to share, I think maybe that would be something I would offer, just to enjoy today.
Seize the day.
Yes, that's right.
All right. And what about giving us a little bit more contact information, or where people can go and find more information about both your movie and yourself potentially?
Well, they can go to transcendentman.com. I mean, they can certainly Google Transcendent Man, and there's a lot of information out there. Mm-hmm. We have a fan page on Facebook, and we're going to be making some announcements soon with regards to the launch of the film and where people can see it, and on what media. So I would direct people just to Google the name or go to transcendentman.com, and we'll have some updates and information shortly.
So is that the best way? Because, for example, I can't wait myself to watch the movie here in Canada. I'm located in Toronto. So is that the best way for me to get updated as to when the movie will be available here in Canada and maybe for our global listeners across the world?
Yeah, absolutely. If you go to Transcendent, although it doesn't reveal any dates now, but if you go there shortly, we will start to reveal dates and our times for the film's launch and the tour, which Ray will be participating on. We're doing a national tour. So I would say go to the website and check it out. There's some other enjoyable things on there. You can read some of the press or see some of the photos and some other interesting tidbits on there. So I would go to transcendentman.com, and all that information will be on there.
That's fantastic.
On this note, I would like to say a big thank you to Barry Ptolemy for taking the time to give us an interview for Singularity Podcast. Singularity Podcast is a feature of SingularityWeblog.com, where you can go and listen to the recording or download the full interview with Barry Ptolemy, director and producer of the upcoming Singularity movie Transcendent Man. Thank you also to all the listeners of Singularity Podcast. I hope that you all enjoyed listening to this interview as much as I enjoyed talking to Barry, and I hope that you're all as eager to watch the movie as I am.